Hi, this is Henning and Morten from flipnormals.com. In this video we're going to go through how to make a Dishonored style portrait using ZBrush. As you can see, we start off using Dynamesh and we're just blocking in quickly some basic proportions. It's not pretty, it's just really rough. And at this point we're not really thinking about that much about the design. It's just getting some basic shapes down, something we can work with later on. No anatomy, just basic stuff. Where are the eyes? Then we start blocking in some anatomy, like basic cheekbone, basic bony landmarks. And we start thinking slightly about the design at this point.
The trap that people often fall into is really just the detailing part too fast. I do the same. I mean, many people do. It's just you forget that you need a solid base before you actually start filling in the rest.
Yeah.
It's like if you have a coloring book and just like forgetting all the lines and stuff. You need to everything needs to be filled in perfectly first, and then you can start adding detail on top.
Yeah. Good analogy, Morten. Yeah, so still just basic anatomy, just basic form. Like the final character doesn't look like this. This is just to make something look kind of humanoid, and just exploring the kind of character he is. At this point, we don't really know what kind of person he is. We just know that he's from the Dishonored universe, and as such, there are a couple of things we have in mind. Like his proportions are kind of messed up. Like he's not gonna adhere to perfect human proportions. And he's going to be fairly edgy. Like, this guy's been out a winter's night before. And
yeah, he's seen some action.
And everybody in this world has. It's a dark and gritty world. So we're trying to incorporate that into, every bit of the sculpture. But the brushes we're using, which is the clay build-up brush. And just the way we're treating this with, hard planes.
You can see with the clay build-up brush, we're using the hard alpha with it, which really gives it this sort of rough look automatically. So you don't need to worry about you're sculpting with a soft brush or anything.
Yeah.
And this really already sort of supports the design.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is just us checking the silhouette, and just to make sure that we're getting the character across that we want, and make him feel like we want him to feel, and just trying to get something strong out of his profile, out of his silhouette.
So when we check from the side view, we want to have a strong, clear shape, not small little bumps. You want to have a big, broad shapes. This is true for all the views, but particularly from the side view, you can see that it's kind of following the nose and the forehead and the back of the head are kind of one nice curve.
Yeah, and especially from when you look at stuff from the Dishonored universe, a lot of it is very, I wouldn't say caricatured, but it's kind of a little bit, everything is
stylized.
Yeah, it's stylized, and especially this is very edgy and very defined. There's no softness to this world.
Even the women, women are normally fairly soft, but right now they're in this universe, they're just edgy and pretty miserable.
Yeah, and you look at some of the concept art, and I mean, you can definitely see that they live in a tough place.
Yeah.
And people, they've adapted to that, and that's sort of the design we're going for.
Yeah. So this is here, you see, we don't even have eyes. It's just a really rough placeholder. Same for the lips and everything. It's very rough Dynamesh stuff. Just getting planes down right now. And if you don't have these planes, your sculpt will fail in the end. You need to define the planes.
Yeah, and it's such with the trim dynamic brush, for example, it's really useful to actually define an actual plane.
Yeah.
And I guess this is sort of a particular style of sculpting. This very geometrical type of sculpting where you fill in the planes. You can clearly see, this is where the cheeks are, this is the nose, this is the bridge of the nose.
Yeah.
There are many different ways to do this kind of sculpting, but this particular style really sort of lends itself well to this character. I think.
Yeah, it does. Now we're just getting some eyes in here. It's really hard to sculpt something without eyeballs. Like your eyes are just gonna look really weird because they're not really conforming to anything.
Yeah, I mean, you can only go for so long without sculpting eyes.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Henning says, it's as soon as you get eyes in there, your sculpt is actually going to change. You can see, we start to pull back the inner parts of the eye a little bit, and actually forming the face around the two spheres that are the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Still no details though. Just getting the curvature of the eyes. So the way we do this is just like getting the polymesh 3D of the sphere, appending it, making it correct on one side. Once it's correct on one side, we use Subtool Master, which is under C plugin, Subtool Master, and there's a little guy there just called Mirror.
A little guy.
Little person there. So just hit Mirror, and this is going to mirror it over to the other side, which is really nice and handy. And this point as well, it's all using symmetry here. Later on, I will disable symmetry, but right now it's just really nice to just explore the character. Once you're exploring the character, it's just really nice because, yeah. We have no idea how it's actually going to look at this point.
No, I mean, most of it is just based off of, like we talked about, Dishonored concepts, and not specifically a character from the universe, but just being inspired from the overall style.
Yeah. And
just trying to make our own sort of fit into that universe.
Yeah, trying to adhere to a general shape language. So the thoughts when doing this was that he was some kind of like general who'd maybe had a slightly dodgy past, which you're going to see later on, like adding more character to him, like scars, because I like scars.
It's always scars.
Always scars.
Every time.
Every time.
We had a talk about that just before, and I asked Henning if he'd ever done a character without scars, and
nope.
We think the answer is no.
Yeah, I think it might be no.
I don't think I've ever done a character with a scar.
Well, time to start. So I don't think we used smooth brush at all during the initial phases of this. Maybe some smooth brush somewhere, but in general it's used very, very little. The cool thing about using something like the clay build-up for smoothing is that you get a lot of character. You get a lot of planes almost for free.
Yeah.
By using that. You see, I just smooth the lip out a little bit, but most of it is just done using the clay build-up.
And it's like a lot of the stuff here kind of looks like it's done very fast and it's done without thinking a lot about it, but that is not really the case, because you gotta look at faces and you gotta do a lot of faces to sort of get to this point where just filling in the muscles and the bony landmarks just comes natural to you.
Yeah.
And this is not, I mean, you can't just do this like just off of nothing.
No.
It's a lot about looking at reference. And once you've got that down, that's where you can sort of start to stylize stuff and move on to making your own sort of like really stylized to push characters, I think.
I think this is very important, like what Martin's saying now, just like really knowing the foundations before you start going crazy into your own fantasy world. I mean, of course, you can totally start making your own designs from day one when you're doing art. Yeah. But the more you know about nature, the better your work is going to be. So yeah, just getting some more fat down here as well. The way we like to think about sculpture is in like a couple of stages. The first one is like bony landmark and proportion, then basic muscle and fat, and then skin and pores on top. So once you don't start adding volume to your fat until like your skull is defined, because all is connected to the bony landmarks. So you really need that to explore the rest.
And even sort of like fat pads is something that adhere to anatomy.
Yeah.
Some people just fill in fat, where they think fat is going to be.
Yeah.
The same with wrinkles. There are pretty strict guidelines for what wrinkles and fat actually look like and where they sit on the face.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Otherwise, your character might end up looking really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, you might not be able to tell exactly why it looks weird, but it's just going to look off. Something is going to look off, and that's probably because you don't know your exact anatomy or yes, one stage of the anatomical foundation might be lacking, like not knowing where the bone landmarks are, where the muscles are connecting, fatty pads, even something like top layer, like small wrinkles and pores.
Yeah.
And you see here now, we're just experimenting slightly with different mat caps. Not experimenting, it's just checking with various mat caps.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before, and it's like, it really helps you to look at your sculpt from sort of like a different perspective.
Yeah.
Different mat caps reveal different things. Like the standard mat cap is really good at sort of like pointing out impurities in your sculpt, whereas sort of like the default one, this kind of mudbox style mat cap that we're using now, is just really has an overall soft feel and makes it look nice.
It looks more comfortable, which, you know, when you make a living making pretty things, it's kind of nice to look at pretty things.
Yeah.
And not making it look pretty in a render for the first time.
Like I can't stand like sculpting with the standard mat cap anymore.
No.
Because it's just it has its uses. It's not that, but there's so many other nice mat caps out there that can really help your sculpt along, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
He looks so sad.
Very sad.
And now we're sort of moving into some asymmetry.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where you take the character and give him character.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
just by moving stuff around, you get a lot more interest in it.
Yeah, and like some story into him.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like scars and a broken nose. You know, he's been in fights, obviously. And
he's just really ugly.
He's pretty ugly. And all of this just lends itself to, you know, what we gather from the Dishonored universe.
Yeah, and by making it asymmetrical, you add more credibility to the design as well. And it just looks more interesting. So from this point on, like, everything is done with asymmetry. So just hitting the X key in ZBrush, just disabling symmetry. Because right now the design is kind of working. Like, right now it's just refining it.
Yeah, the base is there.
Yeah.
The base is there now. And now it's just about, you know, adding sort of like this top layer of old skin. Because he's an older guy, so the muscles won't be as tight in the face anymore.
Yeah.
That's sort of like where you see this aging line, as you call it, right, like around from the nose and down to the chin. And you see the saggy sort of skin underneath the eye. His eyes are a little more sort of tired. Because, again, the muscles relax and brings everything a little down.
In general imperfections, like, because he's lived and, you know, he has emotional scars and all this kind of stuff, you know, just helps sell the design more.
Maybe he was beaten as a child.
Yeah,
you know, it's
beating his child.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
So just knowing about something like the construction of the eye as well is really handy. Knowing that will help you create appealing eyes, and if you don't, the entire sculpt is gonna look weird. Like the eyes are so important to get right.
That's always where your face is like, or like when you look at something, or a person, an animal, whatever. It's always you always go for the face. It's just something like in nature, you know, we're programmed to identify that as the first thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is naturally what we look at.
Yeah.
And if anything is wrong there, your brain just tells you. Because we spend so much of our time looking at faces that we might not be able to explain why, but we know something is wrong.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Yeah, definitely.
So also something like looking at the nose here just before, you can see there is some like hints of construction in the nose. It's not 100% accurate, but there is some construction to it. It's not just like a triangle shape in the middle of the face. There are planes there, and it's composed of multiple parts. And by doing that, it's going to feel more credible, and you can play around with that.
One thing to note about the eyes here is that people don't realize this actually often, I think, is that the inner part of the eye, the one that sits closest to the nose, actually sits quite far in the face, or like in the skull. And I think a lot of people struggle with actually anatomically, like fitting the eye in the face.
Yeah.
So if you just push that back a lot further than you actually think you would need to, that tends to make it fit a little better.
Yeah, exactly. And working on lips now, it's the way I like to refer to lips is like the top lips, because it's like 3 balls, and the bottom lip consists of two balls, like 2 balloons or something. And if you keep that in mind, you kind of get some more structure in it automatically. think I'm just going over everything now. Sculpting with the C add and C sub, just holding down the Alt key to subtract stuff, instead of the smooth brush. Just really define planes.
Yeah, and this way you get some really nice texture.
Yeah, you do.
'Cause often, I mean, you know, it's a style choice, obviously, whether or not you want to smooth out your sculpt. It's kind of like sculpting, you know, with clay. You go with like something like turpentine to really make it smooth if that's what you want. But that's not the feel we want to get across with this character.
No. I think it's really cool to just sculpt with, like, treating it as a sculpture just with clay. The end result isn't like a pretty final frame for VFX movie. It's just like kind of like a piece of art. You don't really care if there are brushstrokes or not. It's kind of like a liberating feeling in a way.
Yeah.
When we work on something with the eyes, it's very important to like make sure the curves are appealing. That you don't have any like big bulges in the curve. You can see before we did the changes to the eyes, they were pretty bulgy, but just making sure that they're curving all the way around.
Yeah, and the angle from the top lid to the bottom lid, like you can see here, is like the top lid is slightly like forward compared to the bottom lid, just to give it this sort of like angle backwards, and that really, I think that really helps sell the eye a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And like we talked about with appeal, it's like I feel personally that people tend to misinterpret the word appeal when it comes to something like characters or creatures. Something can have appeal and not necessarily be pretty. Like this sculpture, for example, is not designed to look pretty. It's not designed to be nice, but it still has appeal.
Yeah.
And for me, the word appeal is just sort of refers to the design, whether or not you find it credible, whether or not you feel like this could exist, whether you're drawn to it or not. Even though it's ugly or it's a scary creature, appeal is sort of like, it's a broad term for that.
Yeah. And ways you can get that is, as we talked about before, like having a solid foundation in anatomy, but also thinking about like proportions. Like obviously here it's not a naturalistic sculpt. Like his eyes are way further up than
what?
Like they're like 1/3 up now, when normally it's like halfway.
Yeah,
his nose is like broken in every possible way you could break a nose.
And he's very spaced. Like the spacing between the eyes is they're very wide.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But all this is just the choice, and it sort of helps sell the character.
Yeah, they're deliberate design choices. They aren't just accidents.
No, and these are the kinds of choices you can start to make once you understand what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the more you do it, the better you get. And the better you get, the faster you can make something like this.
Yeah.
And you can revise on it, you know, do several iterations during a day.
Yeah, and this sculpt here is just about an hour and a half, slightly more than that in total. So this is just like some fun, basically.
Yeah.
There's not a very serious piece. It's just an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, just doodling around, just making an interesting looking character.
He's kind of like an Elvis-looking character now, with the sexy hairdo,
with scars on his face. To create something like here now, we just made we just duplicated the old geometry from the eye and just scaled it up. Nothing fancy, just to have some clay to work with, really.
Yeah, that's just faster than going up and like appending like a new polymesh.
Yeah, and at this point we didn't really have an idea what we were going for the hair. You can see we're trying out different hairstyles, and it's very quick to do that. Just something like the move brush and also the smooth brush here is really nice.
He kind of looks like the bad guy from the Matrix.
Oh yeah,
Smith, isn't it Smith? Agent
yeah,
Smith.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, like that, and then a mix of Elvis.
Perfect.
That's a scary combination.
So when you have an idea of what you want, it's a good idea to when you're doing hair, like using the clay brushes to block in like the bigger strands of hair.
It's exactly the same as like when we were starting out the face. You never want to start out with the details.
No.
Like you want to start out broad strokes, big shapes, and you can always go in and refine that afterwards.
Yeah. So what I like to do here, I like to use the clay build-up brush with no alpha on it. Then you just get a really nice really nice broad strokes, really, which you can play around a lot. So it's really quick. It's a really quick way to design hair.
Yeah, and it gives this sort of like. This also creates a lot of contrast from the character itself, from the face, because the hair. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's gonna be, you know, have a lot of ridges and stuff, and be kind of edgy, but it still has this soft feel to it.
Yeah.
Which sort of complements the face nicely, I think.
Yeah. There's something to keep in mind as well, just keeping soft and hard shapes. When I was sculpting, for instance, the eyes here, I kept in mind making the eyes more like softer, treating them in a soft way, and treating the area around it like a harsher way. You can see like the cheekbones are really harsh and protrudent. Well, just the eyes themselves, the area around the eyes, like eyelids, are softer.
Yeah, and like if you wanna check out something regarding hair, we have a tutorial on it on flipnormals.com. So
yeah,
you could check that out if you're interested in some like more of the specifics of what brushes, the techniques and stuff we use to actually create hair.
Yeah, because let's say this is not in-depth hair tutorial sculpting, and hair is hard to do.
Yeah,
it takes a while to get used to do it. But once you learn the basics and once you have a foundation in it, it's fairly quick to do. You can make something pretty appealing very, very quickly.
Yeah, and like, you know, the way we usually do it is sort of like a mix of the clay build-up brushes, like different alphas, standard brush and Damien standard brush, to just sort of like build up volume, make peaks, and like really deep indents in the hair.
Holding down the Alt key and using the damn standard brush is really nice. You get some really nice and crisp lines. And
really nice.
We use this a fair bit here as well.
And you can use that like many places, you know.
Like use damn standard everywhere because it's amazing. So you can see here the standard brush is used a fair bit, just to define the strands a bit more.
And it's like a lot of this is not going to be seen, so and seeing as it's sort of like a speed sculpt, a lot of the effort is going to be put in what you're actually going to see.
Yeah. We're not sculpting the backside of the head here at all.
No.
You see what we're seeing now. That's what we're sculpting.
Yeah.
So we'll recount this out of camera angle here, and that's going to be kind of from the front or with a slight rotation to it maybe. But we know for a fact that we're not going to show it from the back or anything like that. It's not a turntable.
It's always nice to have a complete piece that you can show off, but having just something sculpted from the front or whatever is really, you know, you can present something really quickly as well like that.
Yeah. Oh, hello, mouth scar. Yeah, my thinking of the mouth scar was just that he has sort of rough past or something, and he's been in a bar fight. Somebody chipped his lip.
Probably also has a scar on the inside of his nose because why not? I don't know.
Actually, he doesn't.
Maybe he had like a knife up his nose and someone like cut the nose open.
Could be. There are a lot of possibilities with scars. Just know that.
Yeah. So if any questions regarding scars, don't hesitate to email Henning. He'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions.
No problem at all.
We should do like a scar tutorial.
I'll do it. You're not gonna touch that. So right now it's just like adding some fat to it or some like leathery tissue on the bottom of his chin. Just makes it look more interesting. Like it's just old and kind of gnarly.
Yeah, and you can see the variation in texture pretty clearly.
Yeah.
From something like the more flat areas to the curved areas. The curved areas are a lot smoother because that's sort of like where everything sort of droops to.
Yeah.
And this again, it's all about creating visual interest, not just in terms of the silhouette or the profile, but you can also do this internally.
Yeah.
And this is often done with variation in color, variation in texture, stuff like that.
Just variation in general creates interest.
Yeah.
Contrast creates interest.
Remember that, kids. It's important.
What Uncle Morton told you.
Uncle Morton. Yeah. Little known fact is that I am older than Henning. By like 6 months, but it still counts.
Yeah. I'm a bit better about that. So just adding some wrinkles around the eyes as well. Very, very low on details. Nothing fancy here. but just enough to like get some definition here, kind of like enhancement details. We're saying this area here is made of this kind of material.
And you have sort of like the muscle around the eye, the orbicularis oculi, sort of like goes around like in a circle. It's like a donut shape.
Yeah.
And with any sort of wrinkles and stuff like that, it always sort of, it goes across the muscle.
Yeah.
So you can see the way it sort of fans out and creates these crow's feet. That's the line that goes across the muscle. They never go along them like that. So they cross them. That's just an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. Good, Morten.
Good. Wrinkle science. I think we talked about doing a wrinkle tutorial.
Yeah, we're probably doing that at some point.
Yeah.
So just by raising one of his eyebrows up, he looks just a bit more suspicious.
Yeah. And that's, you're creasing the skin in between his brows.
Yeah.
Also, creates more interest.
Yeah.
There's more contrast in there.
Also, when you're doing something like this, I just highly recommend getting a mirror. You're going to look really silly. But you can make a lot of funny faces in a mirror, and it's just amazing for like facial reference.
It's going to be fine if you're just sitting in a room alone, making weird like faces at yourself. Incidentally, Henning wasn't when he was doing this. He was sitting next to me, which was very, very funny.
Yeah, that was a bit weird. But you got to suffer for the art, eh?
And you can see here at the top of the eyes now, like we talked about before, how the skin or the muscles above the eyes start to droop.
Yeah.
This is very common in people when you get, slightly older. I think around the age of like 35, 40, that's sort of like when you start to droop down like on your eyes.
But if you are between 35 and 40, don't be sensitive. No. We're not talking about you. We're talking about all the other people.
Just empirical data. It's a fact.
So the head is now working all right. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's from far away it looks fine. So it's time to give him some clothing, because this is a general kind of guy.
It's a life vest.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Just for now. I mean, again, it's like with everything. You start out simple. Don't focus on details. Get the big shapes. And there's design in everything, whether it's a face, hair, a coat.
Yeah.
Also
you get reference with this. Like when we're doing this, we had reference on a second monitor. Get a second monitor if you don't have one. That's gonna save your sanity. It's just really nice to be able to sculpt while looking at reference without minimizing ZBrush or something like that.
And here, like, just quickly to point out the Damien standard brush again, just really nice, creating really crisp edges, nice contrast in the coat that he's wearing.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
quick.
Most of this is done, as I said, with the clay billet brush, but for some lists, it's also a good idea to just use a regular clay brush. The difference is that the clay build-up, well, you might have guessed, it builds up. So the clay brush will just have one layer, which is possibly what you want when you're doing something like clothing like this.
Yeah, it doesn't keep, funny enough, building up.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have a lot more control when you're doing it. It's a lot finer.
Yeah.
But, they're both good in their own way for different things.
Yeah.
Kind of think of the clay brush here as like you're putting on a piece of clay that you've defined the width and the thickness of, and you're putting that on top.
Yeah.
Whereas the clay buildup is just like all the time. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So it's really important to give them something like clothing, because this guy here you wouldn't make his character naked.
No, and his character has changed so much just by that tiny piece of clothing we put on him now. It's just a jacket, and a shirt.
And it's really rough. It's hardly defined at all, but still it gives him so much more character. You can kind of, like before he was a floating naked head in the sky, but right now you can immediately tell that he's some kind of a person of importance.
Yeah, he has authority, and you can see once we zoom out and in and like look at it from up close, but we also a lot of the times look at it from far away to check again the silhouette, and you can see how well it actually works from far away.
Yeah.
Once you get up closer, the detail level doesn't really hold up, but that's just a matter of time and just refining it.
The hard part here for me is never like the details. The hard part here is getting the design right. Figuring out how is this coat composed, like how does it work, and getting all that stuff. Getting the coat to like feel like it's a real coat. That's just work. That's just getting the texture in, getting seams. that's not hard to do.
No.
The hard part is, at least for me, the design part of it.
I think that's true for a lot of people,
Yeah.
including myself. I mean, it's designing stuff is always the hard thing.
Yeah.
Filling in detail is just a matter of how much time are you willing to spend and put into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And at this point, he's really, we're not really touching the face anymore, and his character is sort of, it fits in with the Dishonored universe now.
Yeah.
And, he could be, I don't know, could be like a whaler turned nobleman or something. But
yeah, that was something we had in mind when we started. Like somebody who maybe had a rougher background, but is more noble now. Maybe found some riches. And that's something you should keep in mind as well. Like, what is the past or the story of this character? That's gonna help you so much creating character in him. Instead of the description here being general, and that's literally the only thing you have to work for. It's like, first off, we know he's in the Dishonored universe, which is like heavily based on whaling. Really, it's a really poor universe. They're not very affluent at all. And but saying that this guy here is a whaler who turned rich, that gives you a lot to work with.
Yeah, and just saying like, okay, I'm gonna sculpt face.
Yeah,
face
exactly.
Sculpt, because it's like, okay, what are you basing it off then?
Then you end up with a bald head with basic proportions with no character at all.
Yeah, just the tiniest amount of backstory can really help your designs a long way.
Yeah, in essence, like, it's about, like, one of the most important things in art is like, how does it make you feel? And if you don't have a backstory to it, you're not gonna feel anything. So this is just one of the tools we use to just evoke emotion.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty big deal. Like, all the tools here or everything we do, they're just tools, which just help us convey emotion, basically.
It's easy to tell people to make something that makes other people feel something, and it's not. It doesn't come easy.
No.
It takes practice, and it takes a long time to get an understanding of what is. I mean, good design is very sort of objective, but there's a general sort of, okay, we can look at this. Does it look good? Does it look bad? And being able to evaluate that is a really powerful thing. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
For any artist to have. Oh man, look at that scar.
Must have hurt a lot.
Yeah. Sad, happy, sad, happy.
Yeah, that's something to do as well. You just I constantly keep doing this to my sculpts. Just when it's almost done, just taking like a move brush, snake hook brush, and just like abusing the sculpt a little bit. Just pushing and pulling stuff.
Just literally abusing it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Maybe wrong choice of words here, but
no, but he does look kind of abused.
Yeah.
Just like
by a move brush.
Yeah. Or by Henning. Henning, stop abusing your sculpts.
Well, let's see about that. My point was anyway that just taking a brush and just going a bit crazy, just pushing and pulling stuff. It can just really find something interesting. And I think we're doing that later on as well. Just trying out things. Like, this is concept. We're not attached to this sculpt at all. Like, if we shoot off his mouth or something like that, that's fine. We can change a lot of things in this guy here.
And we have some, got some nice detail around the neck now as well. Just for the fatty pads, and just filling in the last bit of detail on the ears. The ears, it's a very small thing, but every bit helps.
Yeah. And if you have like shitty ears, you're gonna see it.
It's just gonna look shit.
It's just gonna look kind of shit. Like, it just helps. It's one of these things which just helps you define the sculpt.
Why does he have pointy ears, by the way?
Because he's kind of evil.
And
that was my thinking, that by him being kind of evil, pointy ears is kind of like a cheap little thing to just sell it.
Because immediately what I start thinking about is The Legend of Zelda and like tiny fairies.
What's this? Is this another scar on his throat?
Maybe, I don't know, like he's been garroted or something.
Yeah, my thinking here was that like something like garroting or like it just shows that he's been out like a winter night before. Like he has had it rough.
I mean, what you could do is you could also add some scars to his clothing, Yeah. That could be someone roughed up his clothing, tried to assassinate it.
I'm kind of doing that as well, very soon. Not scars, just...
No, anything can have scars.
Yeah. His clothing is bleeding. No, just adding some like variation to it.
Adding some scars to the eyes.
Shut up. Yeah, what we're doing with the eyes now is just like tilting them a little bit, so he looks slightly to the screen right, which just makes it look a bit more interesting. Instead of looking literally straight ahead, perfectly symmetrical, it just looks weird. There is no life to
you
that.
Get so much more character from just offsetting it just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the same with
a
like
tiny bit.
Just offsetting the eyebrows. Just moving the eyes, twisting him, tilting his head a little bit. All those kind of things that like, give him character really help sell it as something that could exist.
Yeah, exactly. And just like very small tweaks now. This is after about an hour and a half. So just going around, just tweaking very small things now, like the mouth. Just going over him and just making sure it's working.
I don't think he's working anymore. He got too rich. It's like selling whale fat, and then he's got other people working for him now.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh no, so mad. Like that. Arr.
Yeah, at this point I was actually looking in a mirror, or in my phone because I couldn't find a mirror. So I was making silly faces while Morten was looking at me, judging me silently.
I don't think you knew. I was like pretending not to look while I was looking.
I had a good feeling. Just getting that scar up breasts.
Yeah, it's another scar? Is that another scar? Yeah,
that's a wrinkle.
Sure. Whatever. And we're coming up pretty close to the end now.
Yeah.
And, the very last parts of this are really just detailing.
Yeah.
It's just tying everything together, making everything look really nice, and just making sure that, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve with the sculpt.
So yeah, some patches on the clothing. So that's kind of like the equivalent of scars to his face. Like somebody tore his favorite blazer or whatever it is. It just adds character to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to make 100% sense. But that was just the last little thing. So yeah, this is the final result, which has been taken into Modo and rendered. I rendered there, and just some post-work in Photoshop. And we have tutorials on both these subjects on flipnormals.com.
Yeah, we'll include some links for you to follow, so it's easy to find.
Yeah, we don't like this specific model, but the principles are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So we hope you learned something from this.
Yeah, and thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.